This is a story of something that followed someone long after the night ended. Something that doesn't just follow you in the dark, but hunts you through the waking world, always just behind you. The line between sleep and reality starts to blur, and what you thought was just a shadow becomes something far worse. It all starts on a quiet, uneventful evening. Nothing that would make you suspect that something terrible is about to find its way into your life. But for this person, it was the beginning of a nightmare they could never escape from. Are you ready? Then listen closely, because what you're about to hear is not just a story. It's a warning. This is a story of something that followed someone long after the night ended. Something that doesn't just follow you in the dark, but hunts you through the waking world, always just behind you. The line between sleep and reality starts to blur, and what you thought was just a shadow becomes something far worse. It all starts on a quiet, uneventful evening. Nothing that would make you suspect that something terrible is about to find its way into your life. But for this person, it was the beginning of a nightmare they could never escape from. Are you ready? Then listen closely, because what you're about to hear is not just a story, it's a warning. Jesse finally turned down a narrow side street, hoping to lose whatever it was that followed him. His apartment was just a few blocks away, and if he hurried, maybe he could outrun whatever this was. But the footsteps didn't stop. They were right behind him, as close as if someone were walking just a few feet away, mirroring his every move. His pulse hammered in his ears. He could hear the sound of his own shoes tapping against the pavement. And then, those footsteps. Still matching his every move, his breathing came quicker now, panic starting to set in. He pulled his jacket tighter around his shoulders, trying to convince himself that it was just his imagination. But deep down, he knew it wasn't. It was real. He passed by a street lamp, the flickering light casting strange, jittery shadows that seemed to dance around him. Jesse glanced over his shoulder once more. Nothing, just the empty street. But as he kept walking, he heard it again. The footsteps, closer this time. He stopped in his tracks, spinning around to face whatever was behind him. His heart pounded in his chest, and his eyes scanned the empty street in front of him. But there was no one there. Then, just as he started to take another step, he froze. He felt it, the cold breath on the back of his neck. A whisper. Jesse. His stomach dropped. It wasn't his imagination anymore. It was real. Whatever it was close, and it had been following him the whole time. Jesse broke into a full sprint. He ran as fast as his legs could carry him, turning corners and darting between buildings. But the footsteps kept up. The sound of them grew louder, closer. It felt as though something was right behind him, just out of his reach, and yet he couldn't escape it. His breath came in short gasps, and he was beginning to feel dizzy, his vision blurring as his heart raced. He couldn't take it anymore. He ran up the stairs of his apartment building, his hands shaking as he fumbled for his keys. The footsteps were right behind him, so close now he could almost feel them on his back. He forced the door open and slammed it shut, locking it with a click that echoed in the silence. Jesse leaned against the door, panting, his body drenched in sweat. His mind raced. What was that? Who, what, was following him? Suddenly, a loud knock echoed through the door, sending a jolt of terror through him. The voice came again, clear and chilling. "Jesse, let me in." He backed away from the door, his mind racing. No, this couldn't be real. Another knock, louder this time. He ran into the bathroom and locked the door, curling up in the corner, trembling. Every sound in the apartment now seemed like a warning. Every shadow seemed to twitch, to move. Then the lights flickered. He heard the whisper again, but this time it wasn't just in his ears. It was in his mind, inside his head, pulling at his sanity. "Jesse, come out." But Jesse didn't move. He couldn't move. He was frozen in place, his body shaking as the seconds dragged on like hours. Jesse never left his apartment that night. The following day, everything seemed normal. But Jesse knew better. The whispers never stopped. They followed him into his dreams, a soft voice that called out his name, reaching from the darkness. It's been weeks now, and the footsteps haven't stopped following him. They're always just behind him, close enough to hear but never enough to see. And with every passing day, Jesse feels himself losing more and more of his grip on reality. He doesn't know if it's the fear, the exhaustion, or something worse, but he's starting to question whether what's following him is really just a figment. What if the shadows you see out of the corner of your eye aren't just your imagination? What if something is always lurking in them, waiting for you to look directly at it? Everyone thinks they're safe when the sun sets, but when the night falls, the real danger begins. In this story, a seemingly normal family begins to experience something so horrifying, they can't even trust their own eyes anymore. Have you ever felt like you weren't alone, even though you were? Like something unseen was right there with you, just out of sight, just out of reach? Well, for this family, that feeling wasn't just paranoia. It was their new reality. This isn't just a spooky tale about haunted houses or ghostly apparitions. It's something much darker, and it starts with a single, unexplainable event. Something that doesn't go away, something that follows you, no matter where you run. It all started one evening when Sam, the father of the family, came home late from work. It had been a long day, and he was ready to settle in, eat dinner, and forget about the stress of the day. But when he stepped into the house, something felt wrong. The air was thick, like the house itself was holding its breath. The lights flickered once, then returned to normal, but the odd sensation lingered. He shrugged it off, thinking it was just the old wiring, and called out for his wife Emily and their 2 kids. No response. The house was eerily quiet. "Emily?" Sam called again, louder this time. Still nothing. He checked the kitchen, then the living room, and finally the kids' rooms, but they were all empty. "Where is everyone?" he muttered to himself, pacing around. The whole place seemed different, almost wrong. Just then, he heard a soft creak from upstairs. Sam froze. It wasn't the wind. It was the sound of someone walking on the floor above him. He hesitated, listening intently. It was strange, because no one else was supposed to be home. Emily had mentioned earlier that she'd taken the kids to a neighbor's house for a play date. He grabbed his phone to call her, but as he did, the creak came again, closer this time. Then a voice. "Sam?" It was faint, almost a whisper, but it came from upstairs. He froze in place, the hair on the back of his neck standing up. Emily had been gone for over an hour. The kids were at the neighbor's. Who, or what, was upstairs? With a nervous glance at the stairs, Sam began to move toward the staircase. He held his phone in front of him, his finger hovering over the screen just in case he needed to make a call. He didn't know what was happening, but his gut was telling him something wasn't right. His footsteps were muffled against the carpet, but the closer he got to the stairs, the more distinct the sounds from above became. It wasn't just one set of footsteps. There were multiple. He could hear the soft thud of something heavy moving, followed by what sounded like dragging. It was almost like a rhythmic shuffle, like someone was moving slowly, dragging something behind them. Sam's heart started to race. He gripped the railing at the top of the stairs, his knuckles white with tension. "Emily!" he called out, trying to steady his voice. "Is that you?" But there was no answer, only silence. With a deep breath, Sam slowly began climbing the stairs. The closer he got to the top, the stronger the smell hit him. It was musty, like something had been left in the dark for far too long. The smell of decay. His pulse quickened. He reached the top of the stairs and turned down the hallway. The door to the master bedroom was cracked open, and he could just make out a shadowy figure standing in the room. It was still unmoving. "Emily?" Sam shouted now, his fear slipping through his voice. But the figure didn't respond. It was simply there, watching. Sam stepped closer, his heart pounding in his chest, his breathing shallow. The closer he got, the more he realized that the figure wasn't Emily. It was wrong. The shape was too tall, the way it stood unnaturally straight, as though it was waiting for him to approach. Before Sam could take another step, the figure moved, jerkily, like it wasn't in control of its own body. Its head turned slowly toward him, and Sam froze. The thing was wearing a tattered, old-fashioned dress. Its face was obscured by long, matted hair, but Sam could still see its eyes, wide, unblinking, and staring directly at him. And then it smiled, a twisted, grotesque grin that seemed to stretch too far, like its mouth was too wide to be natural. Sam's blood ran cold. He turned to run, but the creature lunged forward, grabbing his arm with an icy grip. The force of it sent him crashing into the wall. He tried to scream, but the breath was knocked out of him. It pulled him closer, and he could hear the whisper again. "Stay with me, Sam." And then, everything went black. When Sam woke up, he was no longer in his house. He was somewhere cold, damp, and dark. His hands, where the last thing Sam remembers is, by what felt like rough rope, and the musty smell from before was even stronger. He struggled against the restraints, panic rising in his chest. What was going on? Where was he? "Emily!" Sam shouted into the dark, his voice hoarse. "Kids?" There was no answer, only the faint sound of a shuffle in the distance. He turned his head, straining to see anything. Then, the figure emerged from the shadows once more, this time closer than before. It was dragging something heavy behind it, a large broken mirror, its edges jagged and sharp. As it moved closer, Sam could finally see its face. The eyes, those wide, unblinking eyes, were staring directly into his. But now, there was something else there too, a sense of hunger. "Why are you doing this?" Sam gasped, his heart racing. The figure didn't respond. Instead, it slowly lowered its head, the smile stretching wider than before. And then, it reached up and touched the broken mirror, its fingers leaving bloody streaks across the glass. "Because I'm the one who's always been with you, Sam," the voice whispered, almost a sigh. "You've never truly been alone." The last thing Sam remembers is the mirror shattering, and then nothing. When Emily finally returned home, she found Sam's phone on the kitchen table, his jacket still hanging on the back of the chair, but Sam was gone. The police searched for weeks, but there was no trace of him, no evidence, no sign that he had ever existed in that house at all. But Emily knows the truth. The house still stands, empty, abandoned, and no one dares to go near it. And in the darkest corner, behind the broken glass of the shattered mirror, the same figure waits, silent, still, and ready to follow anyone who dares step too close. If you're still brave enough, hit subscribe for more chilling stories like this one.